back to the channel. So for today's video, we'll be doing more about the XA3 guide. So you're probably here because of my XA3 tutorial video and you wanted to learn more about this lens. So some of you guys asked about lenses, like talk about lenses for this camera, and also the recipe that I have for the photos that you've seen in the videos that I posted. So in this video, we'll be doing those two things. So let's start with lenses. So if you probably don't know a lot about cameras have different sensors. So the most common ones are a full frame camera, or what they call an APS-C sensor camera. If you own an XA3, which is why you're here, this camera actually has an APS-C sensor. So why does that matter? Okay, the reason why that matters is because a focal length in a full frame camera is different from the focal length of an APS-C sensor.
So let me explain.
For example, 35mm. So 35mm is the most common focal length because it's good as an all-rounder lens. So it's good for portraits, but it's also still good for like taking outdoor street photography. It's not too tight, but it's also not too wide.
Hi guys, so I'm actually editing the video at the moment, but then I realized I also forgot to mention that the reason why 35mm is a really popular focal length is because the 35mm is closest to what our eyes see. You know, it's more natural to what we see. Unlike if you have 50mm, it's like really tight. For example, like you're hanging out with friends, you're sitting across the table. If you pull out your camera, the one with a 35mm lens or 35mm focal length, it's gonna be pretty much what you see is what you get. And like if you have a 50mm on, it's so zoomed out, so you need to stand up and then move away. Or if you have like a 16mm, it's more like wider, like this, you know, like it gives you a wider focal length. So that's why if you're starting out, I would suggest you get 35mm focal length on your camera. But since you're an APS-C, I would suggest you get a 23mm lens. So here are some good ones. So the Fuji one, the new Fuji one is really good because it's a little bit more pancakey, although it is quite expensive. If you don't mind a little bulkier but on the cheaper side, like the TT Artisans lens are actually really good. Okay, back to the video.
But a 35mm on a full frame camera is gonna look like a 35mm. But if you try to put a 35mm on an APS-C sensor camera, it's gonna be a little more cropped. So a 35mm would look like a 50mm. Does that make sense? Let's start with the lens that comes when you bought the camera. So if you bought this camera, you probably got the kit lens. So this lens is the one that came with this camera when I bought it. The kit lens is usually a beginner lens, but that doesn't mean it's a bad lens. Contrary to the popular belief that everyone's saying a kit lens is a bad lens. I think as long as you know how to use your camera, like it doesn't really matter with the gear, although gear does help, you know what I mean. But the kit lens is actually really good if you're starting out because the kit lens is a zoom lens. So with the kit lens that we got with our XA3 is actually 16mm to 50mm. When you're using this camera, it's actually good because you can zoom things, and then throughout the process of you using this lens, you can actually figure out what focal length that you like for your photography, you know. Also, another thing to keep in mind with lenses, you cannot just buy any lenses, okay? So for Fujifilms, especially with the XA3, any Fuji X mount lenses are the ones that are meant for these lenses. So you cannot just go to the internet and be like, lenses. It doesn't work like that. So you need to make sure that the lens that you're gonna buy is like an X mount lens. Back to the lenses. So sometimes like you're wondering how come you're not getting the really blurry background that you like other people does, right? So the blurry background, the depth of field is actually cause of how open the aperture is on your camera. So with kit lenses, the reason why that you don't get that really blurry background is because the aperture ring with the kit lens is actually 3.5. So if you have it on the 16mm, it's gonna be a 3.5 is the lowest aperture that you can have, and if you zoom it out to 50mm, you're gonna have 5.6 aperture as the lowest. You cannot go any lower than that. So the lower the aperture, the blurrier the background. It's usually good for taking portraits and like focusing on some things, but that doesn't necessarily mean that taking a photo at like f8 is a bad thing. You know, like just means if your aperture is higher, it just means a lot more things are in focus. So when you got the kit lens, although it did say 16 to 25, I believe you need to multiply it by 1.6. Let me just double check. Oh, it says the crop factor for Fujifilm APS-C sensors are 1.5. So for example, you have a 35mm lens in, you actually have a 52mm focal length. Okay, so the 16mm is actually around like 24mm focal length. So if you do want to get 35mm focal length on the APS-C sensor, you should buy 23mm. So let's move to the lenses that I own for this one. So as I mentioned, I have the kit lens. So the kit lens is the one that came with the camera when you first buy it. Of course, when I got it, I bought a kit lens because I didn't own. No, I didn't buy it. My dad bought it for my sister. But we didn't own any lenses. It was like our first camera. So we got the kit lens, and then I didn't really learn after like, I would say this year, that it's actually you marry the body of your camera but date the lenses. Is that the correct term? Or date the lenses? The correct terminology is you date the body of the camera but you marry the lenses, because it's actually the lens that creates such a huge difference on your photos. So it was this year that I learned about lenses. So I was struggling between choosing 35mm lens and then a 50mm lens, and I didn't know about the crop factor when I bought that lens. So I got a 50mm just because it was cheaper. So this one has an f2 aperture, so you can go really low, and it was a manual focus. It's a good lens, but with the 50mm lens on an APS-C, it's actually more like a 75 focal length. So indoors, when we were in the restaurant or things like that, I had to walk all the way to the back just so I could take a photo of them on the table. So that was a little struggle, and sometimes with the XA3, it didn't really have like a viewfinder. So when I was out and about, I couldn't really find my focus, and then there were a lot of, I would say, good photos that came out of focus because I thought it was in focus, and then when I looked at it on the phone and on the computer, it was actually out of focus. But it was good and it was cheap, and when I used that lens, I was actually like, you know what, it wasn't me. The lens, because I've always had the kit lens all along, and then I got the 50mm 2 lens, and then after that I got this Oreo lens. It's just like $20 on AliExpress. This is probably the ones that you guys saw the most as well. So this Oreo lens is basically just to recreate the look of a disposable camera. So what they did, they took the lens of a disposable and put it in this plastic thing. So your camera kind of recreates that feeling. So it doesn't have any focus at all. It's an 30 millimeter f10 lens, but at the same time, like I said, it's like a plastic lens, so your photos are not going to be sharp, but it will like kind of recreate the look of a film photo. And then I got the 35 millimeter autofocus f1.8, which is the one I'm currently using right now, and to be honest, like my favorite of all. So it's 35 millimeter lens, but it's basically around 50 millimeter focal length. I mostly use this for my shoot, personal things, YouTube. It's not too big, but it's also not too, like, not pancakey. That's why I like it. I actually want a more pancake one, so I was thinking of getting the 27 millimeter, but the 27 millimeter has 2.8. It's not bad, but I wanted a lower aperture lens, so I went with the 35 millimeter.
I might buy the 27 too, but I'm not sure.
So yeah, that's about the lenses. Hopefully I don't forget anything because I didn't make notes. I'm just yapping away. Now let's talk about my settings for the photos that you guys have seen. So I never really changed anything apart from the white balance. So I changed the white balance depending on my mood. So when you open the camera, you guys will see there's a menu button here. So you just press that menu and then you will go to this settings. So with the ISO, I just want to explain. So there's ISO Auto 1, Auto 2, and then Auto 3. So I set my Auto 1 to max sensitivity of 800. And then my Auto 2 max sensitivity of 1600, and then max sensitivity 3200. So if you don't know a lot about cameras, like I was, the higher the ISO, the higher the sensitivity with light, but also there's instances that your photo could be like really grainy if your ISO is too high. So you need to be very careful with your ISO. So normally if it's a really sunny day out and I just want my ISO to be an auto, I put it on Auto 1 so it doesn't go over 800. If it's like indoors or like nighttime, maybe I would try ISO 2, which is maximum 1600. But if I really like it's really dark and I feel like I need more, I would put it on 3200. But at the same time, with the XA3, it does come with a flash, so when not sure, just use your flash. Anyway, after you set that, so you just choose what ISO you want depending on the setting you're in, and then let's go to the actual settings. So dynamic range, I keep it on auto, and then my favorite simulation that I have on the XA3 is the classic chrome. On my X-T50, my favorite is the classic negative, because I feel like the classic chrome is more like a more like a neutral vibe, you know, but like the classic negative has more like a pinkish shadows and undertones that I really like. So on my X-T50, I've just been using a lot of recipes that's using classic negative as its base simulation, and then on here I use a lot of recipes that uses classic chrome as the basic simulation. So after that, you scroll down, and then we'll go back to the white balance later, but I set my color to +2 and then sharpness on -2. I put the highlight tone on +2 and then the shadow on -1, and then noise reduction on +2. And then on the white balance, I put it on auto, and then this is where I play around with the colors. So I leave it at red 3 and +3, or +3, and then blue at +2, just because I like this light pinkish color on my photos. But there are times when I don't feel like doing this one. I would just change the white balance, and I would usually put it on, if I want more of a neutral color, I would put it on +2, -1. So I'll show like photos. Yeah, I think that's everything. So if you guys have any more questions about this camera or want to learn more things about this camera, don't hesitate to leave a message, comment down below. I'll try to answer as many as I can or make a video of it if it's a little bit more difficult to explain. But yeah, I hope you enjoy using your XA3 and start maximizing it. Bye bye.
I just want to quickly show you how to change lenses as well. So you need to make sure that the red on the camera and the red on the lens are aligned. And then when you put them together, all you need to do is twist it and your lens should lock in place.